So joining me now is Dan Geltrude, managing partner at the accounting firm Geltrude and Company. Dan, it's good to see you.
Hey, Kristen.
All right, so I know you're a resident expert here, also a professor at Montclair State University, teaching a course on fraud and forensic accounting. But before we get to how people can avoid potential scams, Dan, what is the most affordable way now for someone to get their hands on a COVID test if they couldn't take advantage of those free tests while they lasted?
Well, the best way to go about this, Kristen, is to really go to your local health department, because their purpose is to assist people in the community. So you may very well be able to get those maybe for free, but at very little cost. And there are still some community testing sites out there. So those things are happening from time to time. So be aware of that. And then finally, many of the pharmacy chains obviously are still carrying the COVID tests. So if you go there and check around, you probably can get them at a pretty reasonable price.
Okay, good to know, of course, because we know the virus obviously is still around. But people across the country, Dan, interestingly, have reported receiving COVID tests without actually having ordered any. What is a common tactic for scammers when it comes to taking advantage of people in this scenario?
So let's just understand what these scammers are trying to do. Do you think they're just saying, hey, let's help people out and get them some COVID tests? Of course not. It's always about money. That's what fraud is based upon. So what they're doing is they get a hold of your Medicare number, right? And then they start sending you COVID tests, and then they turn around and they bill Medicare. That's the fraud. So how do you avoid this? Listen, if you get a COVID test that you didn't order, don't open it. You want to then contact the sender, and you want to verify that there's legitimacy here. And then, of course, you want to report this to law enforcement, because fraud is a crime, and keep that evidence, because that's what you need in terms of to make this a legitimate claim. And then monitor your accounts, because if you're getting those free COVID tests, it means somebody got your Medicare information. So you don't know what you could be charged for next. And then finally, always look for guidance from healthcare professionals. They're the ones who know what you need and have insight to these types of things.
So, of course, I think that's good advice, Dan, right? If you didn't order a COVID test, you probably shouldn't open it. But are there any other things to look out for, simply to tell whether or not something is legitimate versus illegitimate, and other ways to protect themselves?
Look, the main thing that we have always to protect ourselves is our, what's that feeling inside? If something doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. So that healthy skepticism that all of us have, we want to rely on that and always be cautious about anything that you're getting that was unsolicited or it's free, because that's not the real world, right? So, you just want to trust your instincts and know that if you're getting something that you shouldn't have, you probably shouldn't have gotten it in the first place.
Okay, best way to report it if you received illegitimate tests, Dan?
Basically, just report it to your local law enforcement. You call the police department and you say, hey, I'm getting these COVID tests, which I did not order. And this is the company, here's the evidence, here's the information. Can you please follow up on this? And they will, because Medicare fraud is a very serious crime.
All right, Dan Geltrude, glad we have you here to break it down. Dan's a managing partner at Geltrude and Company. Dan, thanks.